Welcome to our countdown of the 20 worst sex addicts in Hollywood history. From scandalous affairs to wild escapades, these stars' love lives were as dramatic as their on-screen performances. Get ready for a jaw-dropping journey through Tinseltown's darkest secrets. Number 20. Charlie Chaplin. Kicking our list at number 20, we have none other than Charlie Chaplin. Known for his iconic silent films, Chaplin's personal life was anything but quiet. Chaplin was obsessed with young women, having confessed to having had sex with over 2,000 women. He would find young women to star in his movies, oftentimes just teenagers, seduce them, and then drop them for the next one as soon as the girl began to fall in love. When they would get pregnant, he would tell them to get abortions and show his contempt for them. One girl, whom he married in secret after she became pregnant, was standing outside on the platform at the back of the train after the ceremony, and Chaplin walked up to her and said, "This would be a good time to put an end to your misery. Why don't you jump?" According to film historian Kevin Browning, Charles would only communicate with the actress he was auditioning via caption cards and mime, supposedly to test their ability to perform in silent movies. The cards would become ever more lewd and suggestive as he got them to undress, and he would fondle their breasts in an exaggerated silent movie acting manner. What's more, at the end, Chaplin would make them stand naked while he threw pies at them. If they cried out, they failed the audition because apparently that made them unfit to mime. Number 19. Frank Sinatra. This crooner's love life was as smooth as his voice, with dalliances with multiple women at once and a penchant for threesomes. Despite his marriage to Nancy Barbado, Sinatra's appetite for women was insatiable. Sinatra's drive to succeed was instigated by his father, who threw him out of their home as a teenager when he announced he wanted to be a singer. He became hell-bent on proving his dad wrong and achieved success early on, not least with women. Fans would throw themselves at Sinatra, and Open DeSano writes that his sexual morals were pretty loose. Sinatra loved to have sex with two women at the same time, and if he was feeling fatigued, he'd say to the girls, "You start and I'll catch up with you." Despite this, in 1939, he married Nancy Barbado, a plasterer's daughter from a large Italian-American family, and they had 3 children together, Nancy, Frank, and Tina. Nancy tolerated the no-strings-attached atmosphere when Sinatra was away on tour and his unlimited access to beautiful women. Number 18. Elizabeth Taylor. This Hollywood queen not only bedded some of the biggest names in the industry, but also allegedly indulged in steamy threesomes with JFK and Robert Stack. With 8 marriages under her belt, Taylor's romantic escapades were the stuff of legend. Liz Taylor was a man-eating movie queen who bedded not only the who's who of Hollywood hunks, but also top-level future presidents. And if it wasn't enough for Liz, she is alleged to have engaged in wild threesomes. Okay, the woman was married 8 times, but still, a threesome with JFK and Robert Stack? OMG. She not only slept with JFK, but also shared her intimate passion with Ronald Reagan. Now that's a girl getting busy on both sides of the aisle. The list of Liz's love goes on and includes such classic stars as Errol Flynn, Victor Mature, and a married Tony Curtis. Nothing stopped Taylor when she was on the prowl, except apparently Frank Sinatra. It seems that despite her attempts to blackmail the mobbed-up superstar, he refused to marry the love-struck Liz.
Him. 1, 10, anyone? No one? Have they kissed you with Caesar's lips, touched you with his hands? Has it been his name you cried out in the dark? And afterwards alone, has he reproached you, and have you begged forgiveness of his memory?
You come here then running over with wine and self-pity to conquer Caesar.
Number 17. Steve McQueen. From trysts in Mexican brothels to rendezvous with starlets in his Beverly Wilshire suite, McQueen's libido was as wild as the characters he portrayed on screen. McQueen lost his virginity at 13 to a teenage hooker with a sweet tooth. You didn't pay her with money, he later recalled. You bought her cakes. She was getting fat, but at 15, it gave her big breasts. By 16, he was working as a towel boy in a brothel. In Hollywood in the 1960s, McQueen frequented the Whiskey A Go-Go, where he met Playboy hairdresser Jay Sebring. The pair met a beautiful young starlet named Sharon Tate there, and the trio engaged in drug and booze-fueled threesomes, even after she married director Roman Polanski. While married to Ally McGraw, he maintained a suite at the Beverly Wilshire in LA just for quickies. He interviewed actresses there for movies that didn't exist, hired escorts in droves, and had sex with groupies on a set in his trailer. While making The Magnificent Seven in 1960, he and co-star Robert Vaughn spent Good Friday holed up in a Mexican brothel. After getting wasted on margaritas, they toasted the film's title by sharing 7 prostitutes between them. To keep up with his debauched lifestyle, McQueen ingested vast quantities of drugs, including cocaine, high-grade peyote he bought from Navajo Indians, LSD, and vials of amyl nitrate, aka poppers, to supercharge his already fearsome libido.
Like ice. Round 3. You won a round. That's your only round so far.
Number 16, Howard Hughes. This eccentric billionaire had a penchant for young starlets, exerting control over their lives in exchange for fame and fortune. His relationships were fraught with manipulation and abuse, leaving a trail of broken hearts in his wake. Before there was a Me Too movement and Harvey Weinstein, there was Howard Hughes, a film producer, owner of RKO Pictures in the late 1940s through the 1950s, and one of the world's richest men. He was a legendary playboy and an often emotionally and physically abusive man who seduced, harassed, and cajoled scores of famous actresses, including Ava Gardner, Bette Davis, Lana Turner, Ginger Rogers, and more. As Hughes got older, his targets became younger, his controlling nature more severe. Hughes was 35 when he met Faith Domergue, then 16, and an actress under contract with Warner Brothers, at a party on his yacht. In time, his pet name for her became Little Baby. Her loving nickname for him was Father Lover. Hughes, who carried on with Gardner, Turner, and a then-teenage Gloria Vanderbilt while still with Domergue, would never marry her or make her a star. But if his relationship with Domergue became a cautionary tale for young actresses, for Hughes, it was a template. Whenever he saw a picture of a pretty teenage actress, he sought to get her under contract and under his full control right away, installing them in his apartments, scheduling every moment of their lives, and hiring each a personal driver who was also his spy. Stories of Hughes's pursuits are a litany of creep, including that of actress Terry Moore when he was 43 and she was 19. As she wouldn't sleep with him until they were married, Hughes married her on a boat, but did so in international waters. When Hughes saw a picture of a 23-year-old Italian beauty, Gina Lollobrigida, in 1950, his representatives offered plane tickets for her and her husband to fly to LA to meet Hughes, but sent only one ticket. When Lollobrigida finally had the chance to talk business with Hughes after a month and a half as a virtual captive, he tried to persuade her to divorce her husband and marry him.
Yesterday, I was assured that I would be allowed to cross-question through the committee. That is, that I could ask you questions and you in turn would ask them of Senator Brewster.
Number 15, Joan Collins. With a string of high-profile affairs and marriages, Collins was a true Hollywood siren. From Warren Beatty to Ryan O'Neal, her love life was a roller coaster of passion and scandal. Curiosity on the subject led Joan to her first husband, English actor Maxwell Reed. This charming person asked her out, slipped a drug into her drink, and then raped her. Joan married Reed anyhow, and her career really began to heat up. Joan Collins did have other, shall we say, more romantic adventures in Hollywood, eventually divorcing Maxwell Reed. Joan cavorted with a string of available and unavailable men, including Charlie Chaplin's son Sidney, Nicky Hilton, who had been married to Elizabeth Taylor, and Richard Burton, who tried and failed to seduce Joan while they were shooting Sea Wife. Sex, Collins writes in Past Imperfect, was the best indoor sport going, and that included poker, Scrabble, and charades. In 1959, Collins met Warren Beatty. Actually, she first spied him across a room. He was dining with Jane Fonda at an Italian restaurant. Beatty and Collins began a much-publicized affair. Next in line was Anthony Newley, whom Joan did marry, despite knowing of his penchant for very young girls. Fed up with her marriage, Collins had an affair with Ryan O'Neal. Eventually, Collins and Newley were divorced, but not before the start of her next affair with Ron Cass, then president of Apple Records. They married and had a child, Katie, and Joan began once again to get ambitious. Number 14, Mickey Rooney. This Hollywood legend had a larger-than-life personality both on and off the screen. Mickey Rooney was a unique part of Hollywood history. One of a group of performers who started their careers in silent movies, Rooney saw it all from the beginning. From precocious child star to stalwart partner of Judy Garland, then at 18 he almost caused a scandal by having an affair with superstar Norma Shearer, 20 years his senior, and at the height of her fame. He was the husband of Ava Gardner and 7 other ladies, top box office star in America for 2 years, TV star in the 1950s, honorary Oscar winner in 1983, still performing in the 21st century, full of energy and loving every minute of it. Rooney admits to a roistering, bacchanalian lifestyle and in his autobiography describes in lurid detail his many sexual conquests. He has had 8 wives and cracks that when he says I do, the vicar says I know.
Mickey, do you remember the first time you saw Judy Garland?
I certainly do. I saw her at the Pantages Theater.
Number 13, Clara Bow. Bow's unapologetic approach to love and relationships made her a tabloid sensation, with open liaisons with various male stars and directors. Clara moved to Hollywood, and film after film came out, at least 4 a year. In short order, she was the most sought-after star in Hollywood. She was the most overworked and underpaid actor in Hollywood. She was also the most unorthodox actor in Hollywood. She didn't play the Hollywood games. Stars at the time signed morality clauses and generally gave the impression of being morally upstandard, though in real life they were constantly sleeping around and having affairs. Clara had open liaisons with various male stars and directors, including Gary Cooper and Victor Fleming, later the director of The Wizard of Oz, and so she regularly appeared in a bad light in the gossip magazines. Of course, the men she went out with didn't suffer the criticism she did. Clara was unmarried, and the men she went out with one exception, a doctor who was on the verge of divorce, were too. Yet since she was so open about her sex life, she was widely condemned, generally by hypocrites who were engaging in the same activities but lying about it. She went through many engagements, but finally married an actor in cowboy movies, Rex Bell, who later became a Nevada politician in 1932. By this time, her short but bright career was already near its end.
The result was to be Clara Bow, the culmination of the flapper heroine. A sexy little girl, a tease.
Number 12, Lana Turner. This blonde bombshell was the epitome of Hollywood glamour, but behind the scenes, her love life was anything but smooth sailing. Lana Turner never looks the same. I've seen her in hundreds of pictures and dozens of films, and each time she looks like a slightly different person. Turner was a chameleon, a Hollywood-made confection, a liar, a victim, and a real-life femme fatale, party to one of the most infamous and tragic Hollywood scandals. The studio sold her as all-American and wholesome, and her roles, youth, and blondness all seemed to match. But in 1940, she began compromising that image. Instead of a nice courtship with, say, Andy Hardy or Mickey Rooney, Turner went on a date with Artie Shaw, the most popular big band leader of the era and a man 11 years her senior, and got married. They fought. Turner got supposedly pregnant, he denied the baby was his, she had an abortion, and they divorced all within 4 months. MGM's publicity department rolled with the punches, inflecting Turner's all-American image with touches of passion and impulse. Turner married again on impulse, only turns out that jerk wasn't actually divorced from his first wife. The marriage was annulled, the non-husband attempted suicide. Turner found out she was pregnant, and they remarried for the sake of the baby. Over the next decade, Turner married and divorced, first to a millionaire, second to actor Lex Tarzan Barker. She dated dozens of men in between, and the rumor was that she, like that goody two-shoes Grace Kelly, truly loved sex. As one MGM executive explained, Lana had the morals and attitudes of a man. If she saw a muscular stagehand with tight pants and she liked him, she'd invite him into her dressing room.
And if there's one thing I approve of, it's character.
If there's one thing I approve of, baby, it's you.
You know something, Tom? I'm hungry. I'm always hungry. What time is breakfast?
Well, Flora will have it ready for us as soon as we get back from the lake.
Oh, well, she better have plenty of it.
Pig.
Oh, Tom.
Number 11, Louise Brooks. The silent film starlet was as famous for her scandalous love affairs as she was for her iconic bob haircut. Young yet talented, Louise soon found work as a chorus girl and then as a semi-nude dancer as one of the Ziegfeld girls, a path in life many of the 1920s flappers chose. 1925, a cocktail bar. Here, Louise met a man, but he was no ordinary man. It was Charlie Chaplin. Let's just say, Louise and Charlie hit it off, and so began a 2-month affair. Charlie was married but decided to call off the affair, sending Louise a check as a thank you for some reason. Louise declined the check, predictably. She made her screen debut in the silent era in the picture The Street of Forgotten Men. Louise loved sex. After Charlie came Walter Wagner, head of Paramount, and also married. She signed to Paramount before the affair began, Walter begging Louise to sign for MGM to avoid salacious rumors. She had a cult following, a raw magnetism oozing from her reputation as a party girl and one of the most famous flappers of her age. The scandal sheet grew and grew each night. She loved the controversy as she loved the spotlight of the stage. Throughout the 1920s, she continued to pose nude for photographs, and they left little to the imagination. She was completely exposed, yet that was who she was. She wore her soul for all to see. She was mixing it up with the biggest stars of her day, a true socialite. The men loved her, but so did the women. Louise had many relationships with women in her life, including Pepe Lederer. Louise was living the luxurious, glamorous lifestyle of a Hollywood starlet. She was an icon for millions. Sexually liberated, she lived life on the edge of infamy. She was experimental. Her liaisons were legendary, especially those with women such as Pepe and Peggy Fears, even Greta Garbo at one point. She never said she was gay or bisexual. She did not like those particular labels. She liked sex and she liked love, and she didn't care who it was with or who it was intertwined with. Number 10. Jane Mansfield. Known for her bombshell looks and vivacious personality, Mansfield was not only a popular actress, but also a notorious sex symbol of her time. Bold, brash, and smart as a whip, Jane Mansfield simply loved to push the limits of decency. Making great use of her buxom figure, Mansfield was not only a rabidly popular actress, but also one of the most vivacious and visible sex symbols of her age, until it all ended in one of the most shocking tragedies Hollywood had ever seen. On Christmas Eve 1949, a 14-year-old Jane met the strapping, slightly older Paul Mansfield at a high school party. Before long, the pair got hot and heavy. Less than a year after they met, she and Paul married, tying the knot in May 1950 when she was just 17 years old. In February 1955, Mansfield got a scandalous claim to fame. She appeared as Playboy magazine's Playgirl of the Month, launching thousands of teenage fantasies in the process. Suddenly, Jane Mansfield was the name on everybody's lips, and all those studio heads that rejected her thought twice. With an origin story like this, is it any wonder Mansfield's life got so insane? Just to be a little fair to Paul, Jane wasn't the easiest wife to have around, or the most faithful. With looks like hers, Jane simply couldn't limit herself to the attentions of one man, and the couple often fought about her many affairs. Mansfield's Little Black Book was the hottest ticket in town. According to many sources, Mansfield had affairs with the likes of Robert Kennedy and even his brother John F. Kennedy, who obviously had a thing for busty blondes.
Can't think of the others, and then there was Bobo and then Rocky. And all because you can't forget George Schmidlap.
Number 9. Joan Crawford. With a reputation for her freewheeling sex life, Crawford wasn't afraid to pursue what she wanted, even if it meant taking control of her male colleagues both on and off the screen. Rumors of Joan Crawford's freewheeling sex life had circulated Hollywood for many years. Even so, director Vincent Sherman was taken off guard when in 1949, as part of preparations for a movie called The Damned Don't Cry, she invited him to a studio screening room to watch some of her previous work. The fact that Sherman was married with 2 young children meant little to Crawford, then not long divorced from her third husband, a long-forgotten actor named Philip Terry. As the two sat in the dark, she removed her clothing and initiated an afternoon of wild passion. Never had I encountered such female boldness, recalled Sherman many years later. I was confronted with a woman who went after what she wanted with a masculine approach to sex. When he later confessed to his wife Hedda, she was philosophical. Well, she replied, I guess it's too much to ask of any man that he turned down the opportunity to sleep with Joan Crawford. Few men ever turned down that opportunity with the star of such classics as Mildred Pierce, The Women in Grand Hotel, as the siren conducted relationships with many of her directors and leading men. These ranged from a disastrous liaison with Spencer Tracy to a deep bond with Clark Gable which lasted more than 30 years. Although she was undoubtedly an exceedingly sensual woman with no inhibitions, there was a darker reason for this seduction of her male colleagues. She was trying to take control of me and the film, recalled actor-director Vincent Sherman, one of many who suspected Crawford of turning her sexual wiles to professional advantage. Number 8. Kirk Douglas. Despite his image as Hollywood's beloved leading man, Douglas had a reputation for his extramarital affairs and insatiable appetite for women. Renowned ladies' man Kirk Douglas wasn't prepared to dish on his sexual exploits during his appearance on The Dick Cavett Show in 1971 to hawk his latest movie, A Gunfight. But Cavett, a sly night show host, New viewers weren't interested in Douglas's new Western. They wanted to know if the very married hunk was betting all those gorgeous Hollywood actresses. Cavett told him that ABC had compiled a film of all the incredible number of women that have passed through your hands, and he directed the actor to watch a series of clips of himself romancing co-stars Lana Turner in The Bad and the Beautiful, Gene Simmons in Spartacus, Ava Gardner in 7 Days in May, and of course Dunaway. It would be another 2 decades before the man who still commands a standing ovation when he enters a room would finally admit to his infidelities. In a titillating autobiography written when he was 71, Douglas admitted that he not only cheated on his first wife, Diana Dill, with whom he had 2 sons, including megastar Michael Douglas, but he also messed around on his current wife, Ann Bidens, who gave him another 2 sons. Before the marriages and in between, the man born Isser Danilowitz to a poor Jewish family in Amsterdam, New York was unquenchable. "I'm a son of a bitch, plain and simple," he admitted in his 1988 autobiography, The Ragman's Son. Douglas opened his little black book and ticked off some of the greatest names to grace the silver screen. The actor kissed and told on Crawford, Linda Darnell, Marlene Dietrich, Rita Hayworth, Evelyn Keyes, Marilyn Maxwell, Patricia Neal, Ann Sothern, and Gene Tierney. When it came to sex, Douglas admits he looked at it as if he were on a big game safari in Africa.
Oh, is that what you mean? You talk as if we were married.
Well, we're going to be. And tomorrow's as good a time as any.
Tomorrow. Say, that's dandy. Tomorrow, huh?
Number 7. Mabel Normand. Superstar, seductress, murder suspect. Mabel Normand was a star at age 16 and dead at 37. And the life she lived between these short, brutal years careened between truly glamorous and utterly tragic. The actress was one of the very first Hollywood sex symbols, particularly because of her natural, bathing beauty good looks. She had big brown eyes, full chestnut hair, and a mischievous grin that contradicted her innocent appearance. Mabel was involved with many men. She was as emotional and passionate as any other actress, and she was once very, very fit. Max Sennett noted in his autobiography that leading ladies would often fall in love with and run off with their leading men at the drop of a hat. Mac was furious when he and Mabel first met Charlie Chaplin, and he realized that his big star imagined nothing happened between them, even though they feared Mac's vengeance. Roscoe Arbuckle was closely watched by his wife Minta. She could do nothing about Mabel coming to their Santa Monica beach house every Sunday and going off with her co-star. They would swim together from Santa Monica to Venice Pier, which was convenient because Minta couldn't swim. It's not known if they stopped off in some lonely spot on the way, although it would be unusual for Mabel to be involved with a married man. The young pair became an item. One thing that interested Mabel greatly was love triangles. Why she involved herself so is difficult to understand, as this was a risky activity. Mabel, however, was reckless in the extreme, and she might have had wanted to hurt other women, as she had once been hurt herself. Number 6. Errol Flynn. Known for his swashbuckling roles on screen, Flynn's off-screen antics were just as adventurous. The handsome actor was always known for his flamboyant lifestyle. As a teenager, he was expelled from several schools. At one, he had an affair with a school laundress. And in Hollywood, the star of such swashbucklers as The Adventures of Robin Hood was known for his womanizing and vast consumption of alcohol. In 1942, 2 underage girls, Betty Hansen and Peggy Satterley, accused Flynn of statutory rape. A sensationalized trial took place in January and February of 1943. He was acquitted of all charges. His next film, Gentleman Jim, was a hit, but his hedonistic lifestyle caught up with him. He died of a heart attack at the age of 50 in 1959, with his 17-year-old girlfriend, Beverly Adland, by his bedside.
Like us, for example, we had such a bad beginning that we're bound to have a wonderful future.
That's typical Irish logic, totally unconnected.
Think so? Well, maybe Irish, but it's not unconnected, and I can prove it. Now look.
Number 5. Rex Harrison. Sexy Rexy, who would later win a Tony and an Oscar for his performances on stage and screen as Professor Henry Higgins in My Fair Lady, came to Hollywood with his second wife, Lily Palmer, in the 1940s after appearing in several films in his native England. Signed to a contract at Fox, he starred in such hits as Anna and the King and The Ghost and Mrs. Muir. In 1947, he began to have an affair with actress Carol Landis. Harrison, however, wouldn't divorce Palmer to marry her. Supposedly despondent over this fact, Landis, who had attempted suicide previously, ended up taking a fatal overdose of pills at her Pacific Palisades home in 1948 after spending the night there with Harrison. The scandal ended his contract at Fox and temporarily halted his film career. He and Palmer divorced in 1957. He would marry 4 more times.
Nobody does it better. sad for the rest. Nobody does it half as good as you.
Number 4. Clark Gable. Despite his status as Hollywood royalty, Gable's personal life was filled with scandal and controversy. He squired older women, some of them perhaps closet lesbians, and had close personal possible sexual relationships with a number of openly gay men. He was, as well, a serial seducer of women. Clark Gable, the most famous male movie star of the 1930s, drank heavily, hit the road, and slept with prostitutes when he felt like it. Carried on an affair with Joan Crawford when they were both married and, on at least 2 occasions, wrapped his car around a tree. He settled down somewhat when he fell in love with Carol Lombard, whom he married in 1939. According to The Guardian, Gable was a notorious womanizer. Perhaps one of the most shocking stories about Gable was the one shared by fellow old Hollywood icon Loretta Young, and only in her memoir after death. According to BuzzFeed News, Gable and Young crossed paths as co-stars on the 1935 flick Call of the Wild, where they began flirting instantly. Once production wrapped on location and the cast and crew boarded a train en route back to Hollywood, Young recalled Gable entering her compartment where he allegedly raped her, resulting in a pregnancy. At the time, he was married to Rhea Langham, and Young didn't tell a soul what happened until years after the incident, hiding her pregnancy for as long as she could. She eventually gave birth to a girl, Judy, and shipped her off to be raised by nuns until she cleverly took her back 2 years later and disguised the entire ordeal as a mere adoption.
Sure you're all right? Well, let's see you walk.
Finally, we come to number 3, Lupe Velez. Known as the Mexican Spitfire, Velez was as fiery off-screen as she was on. Even at that tender age, Lupe had sex appeal, and no race is as quick to recognize this quality as the Mexican. The house was surrounded by boys of all ages who whistled in various keys. For Lupe, these young swans were simply a means to an end. She had an absorbing curiosity about motion picture stars, and she discovered, young as she was, that her kisses were marketable. She would bestow a chaste salute on a masculine cheek in exchange for a picture of a star or a colored ribbon to wind in her dark braids. Thus, men became her tools to gain the things she wanted, and the house was besieged with them. This fiery femme fatale was the queen of the amour fou, and was often spotted with her dates at the Garden. In his cult gossip book, Hollywood Babylon, Kenneth Anger wrote vitriolically that Velez would flash her charms at parties, always innocent of lingerie.
Wow! What's that, Carmine? No, you... Listen, get away from me! I want to come! Get away from me, you big love! Get away from me! Wait till I fight. Wait till I get hold of him. I'm going to break every little bone in his body. Oh! There you are.
Number 2, Gary Cooper. Gary Cooper was Hollywood's beloved good guy, but few know his darker history. Behind his seductive stare, this cowboy struggled to rein in his playboy ways, always falling prey to his forbidden desires. One of the key players to help Cooper in his rise to stardom was none other than the beautiful Clara Bow. Thanks in part to her influence, he landed a role in one of the biggest films of 1927, Children of Divorce. But that wasn't all. Behind the scenes, there was a romance brewing. You see, Cooper was quite the ladies' man, and not even Bow could resist his charms. Their romance was swift and short-lived, with Cooper moving on to conquer Hollywood. However, the lovely Clara Bow certainly wasn't his last high-profile lover. In fact, before his day in the sun was over, Cooper gained himself an infamous reputation of becoming one of the industry's most ruthless womanizers. Cooper really knew how to move from one it girl to the next. In 1929, he embarked on one of his most tempestuous affairs. On the setting of The Wolf's Song, Cooper fell for the alluring Mexican actress Lupe Velez. However, Velez's hot-blooded nature often landed them in some outrageous fights. Emotions were running high at all times, and the tabloids just ate their antics up. Gary Cooper was not a man of loyalty and commitment. While entertaining his fiery passion with Velez, he also struck up some affairs on the side. And the women he chose weren't just anybody. He seduced and ravished some of the greats, including Marlene Dietrich and Carol Lombard. Of course, his hungry libido didn't end there.
Do you want to leave me?
Number 1. Warren Beatty. With a reputation for bedding thousands of women over the course of his career, Beatty was the ultimate Hollywood playboy. Warren Beatty wasn't your typical handsome. There was something earnest about him, something plaintive, needy, that made women want to protect him, and of course, sleep with him. And if you know anything about Warren Beatty, it's probably that he's rumored to have slept with 13,000 women over the last 75 years. He also hooked up with Joan Collins. They were head over heels for each other, and apparently having a tremendous amount of sex. They became engaged in late 1958, moving to a teensy apartment in Chateau Marmont. Collins and Beatty were still engaged, but Collins was off shooting elsewhere, and as Beatty's star rose, his need for an engagement seemingly fell. Or who knows, they might have just figured out that they had irreconcilable sleep schedules, or that only one of them liked black licorice. A planned wedding was called off just in time for the hoopla surrounding Splendor in the Grass, and its pile of Golden Globe and Academy Award nominations to crest. Oh, and for a hot relationship with co-star Natalie Wood to develop, all our Pats and K-Stew style. Their relationship apparently apes of what their on-screen characters in Splendor, all roller coastery and emotional, although I bet they actually had sex instead of going crazy and or becoming poor. Wood and Beatty attend the Oscars arm in arm, surrounded by cameras, and when Wood loses Best Actress to Sophia Loren, gossip maven Hedda Hopper exclaimed, "Natalie Wood was robbed, but at least she's got the nicest consolation prize, Warren Beatty." Around this time, Beatty began to establish the beginnings of his image as a fresh-faced womanizer. Already, there's something about the way he looked at women, and the way that women blossomed under his gaze. After some testing of the waters, Beatty was linked to Leslie Caron, she of An American in Paris and Gigi Cupid doll fame. Caron was 6 years older, a mother of 2, and Beatty was apparently totally smitten. According to lore, he sees Julie Christie, still hot after Dr. Zhivago, meeting the Queen, and falls for her. They move in together, have a lot of sex, go full counterculture. And then there was Bugsy, Annette Bening, an actual marriage, a rather pulseless remake of Love Affair, and 4 children. Beatty was certainly a womanizer and probably most likely a sex addict. So were lots of stars of classic Hollywood. The difference was that sex became part of his image in a way that it never could for his antecedents. Beatty's image encapsulated the masculine role in the sexual revolution, the casualness, the sheer proliferation of partners, and the accompanying emotional distance and unsatiated hunger.
Finish it.
Finish it. Would that make you happy? If I were a poet?
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more juicy gossip from the world of entertainment. Got any favorite scandalous stories from Hollywood's past? Share them in the comments below. See you then.